Welcome to the National Agricultural Literacy Curriculum Matrix on agclassroom.org. If you're watching this video, it means that you're probably considering entering a resource, whether it be a lesson plan or companion resource, and that this resource, you're interested in having it shared publicly through this website or through state Ag in the Classroom websites, as this API, this matrix, resides on several state program websites. So just to get right into it, this is the Matrix website, and if you go down here where it says submit a resource to the Matrix, you have two choices here: an innovative lesson plan or a relevant companion resource. A lesson plan is the instruction, simply what it is you're going to do to execute that instruction in a plan. And a companion resource then supports that instruction. So you may actually have a really good map or software or website or video that you think would enhance a piece of instruction. And if you want to check out to see if this is already listed, you would then just be able to put a keyword search in here to see if that resource actually already exists. And you would do that same with a lesson plan. So let's take a look at that, how that works. Probably the first thing to do before you even get started is to look at a lesson plan to see what they entail. But this paragraph right here on submit a lesson plan will give you a little bit more detail about how they're organized. They all need to meet, the instructional pieces need to meet the National Agricultural Literacy Outcomes. If you're not familiar with these, you can click on this link and you can see all the different outcomes or benchmarks that we've set through research about what students would know at grades K2, 3-5, 6-8, and 9-12. So that is a resource for you to take a look at to see what we think being agriculturally literate looks like at the various grade levels. Before you submit, and this is in bold and italic, before you submit your lesson, search the matrix to determine if a similar lesson already exists. If the lesson topic does exist, but your lesson plan offers a unique approach or activity, consider adding your activity as a companion resource. And sometimes we take that, not just a companion resource, but we put it right into the lesson if the original author will allow it. For example, to be a companion resource in this matrix, we want to make sure that it meets or can be used by 3 or more lessons. If it's something that's very special and would only work with 1 or 2 pieces of instruction, whether it be an activity or video or otherwise, then we're just going to drop it right in as an essential piece or an essential activity to that lesson if we can get the original author's permission. So before you begin to submit, search the matrix for that. So let's take a look then at the matrix and search that. And you can search directly from the agclassroom.org webpage, or you can search from that other subpage that we were just looking at. But for example, let's say that you have a lesson and it is on pollination. And these are all the lessons that we would have in the matrix for pollination that are not being excluded by grade level. Until you click these open, you wouldn't see this. We could have searched by grade level as well. Like, for example, if you wanted to say, I have a great idea for upper elementary on a lesson plan on pollination, you add that as a filter and then search. Now you've got these 3 other lessons. So that's another way to see if there's already some instruction. Again, we don't need 3, 4, 5, 6 different lessons on the same topic. If we have that in the matrix, then a teacher might as well just use Google. We're hoping to have some really high quality pieces of instruction that make it so it's easy for teachers and they don't have to sift through hundreds possibly of resources like they would in a Google search. So make sure you use your filters correctly. After you do that, and you say, okay, I'm going to take a look at this lesson, flower power. How's this relate to pollination? This sounds very similar to what I want to do. You could take a look at this lesson and say, okay, there's the time period, the purpose, materials, okay, yep. And here are the different activities: activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, bee dance. Oh, my resource is quite different. It really is a totally different lesson. I want to enter it separately. Or, boy, this is really close to what I had in mind. I'm just going to use it, or I'm going to submit a companion resource for this, or a possible another activity for consideration. So that's the way that you should use before you even get started, and don't spend a whole lot of other time. Find out if there's actually a resource in there. Now let's head back over here and take a look at submitting a lesson plan. So we've searched the matrix, we've determined, yes, something we have is unique, or we have a companion resource that we want to add. You can go down here. If it's a companion resource, it's a different submission page. If you're going to submit a lesson, you stay on this page. The companion resource has a similar form just like this for submission, so I'm not going to go into that with any detail other than if I'll take a look and open it here. It's just the same type of a form. It's actually much shorter because it doesn't have as many pieces, but that's for a companion resource that you are suggesting for a lesson. And in fact, on that form, we ask you, what lesson do you believe this goes with? Title of this resource, resource development, the URL, material list that you may have if it's an activity, the procedures, and then of course the keywords and the credits, just like we would ask for on the lesson plan. So we put a search here that makes it easy for you to find the lesson that you're looking for, that you think that this might be a really great companion for. Going back then to the lesson plan submission, because this has got a lot more moving parts, if you will. The Strategy Tools Wiki. Let's say that you have a great lesson, but it's very teacher-centered. It's lecture, it's PowerPoint, it's teachers asking the questions. We've developed a Strategy Tools Wiki right here. And when you go to this wiki, you'll see different names for strategies and a description for a different type of engagement. If your lesson is very teacher-centered and you're trying to do something to get students to get really engaged, we actually use the 5E approach with our lesson plan design. And engagement is a really important piece. It's the first thing we want to do. We want to engage the learner. We want them to have the ability to explore agriculture. These are some more student-centered types of strategies that you might say, oh, instead of the teacher explaining this, I can do this, or have the students do this, and they will learn the same concepts. So there's a link to this wiki, and we keep adding to it all the time. And in fact, if you are inside of the search terms on the main page and you're searching for a lesson that maybe uses a KWL chart, or uses journaling, or uses the jigsaw method, you could open that lesson by doing a keyword search and see how that lesson deploys that particular strategy. So let's go back here then. That's the strategy tools. There's also a lesson plan rubric. I highly recommend that you take the lesson plan you've created. You probably already have it in Word or on a PDF document, and you see by looking at the lesson plan rubric if your lesson plan will score or meet the very bare minimum, if you will, of the types of things that we're looking for in these lesson plans by looking at your lesson and scoring it with this lesson plan rubric. So take a look at that. If you want to have a template of what is actually right here, the form itself that you want to work from offline, there's a PDF that's fillable or an MS Word file that you can download that's exact replica of what you see here inside of this form. Last thing that's in this paragraph, and it's quite important. If you have questions about copyright, please consult the copyright decision tool. And this is a Canadian product, but it actually, after looking at it with a copyright expert, it's very applicable to the US. We try very hard when we get a lesson to search the titles, maybe search a little bit about the procedures. And if we find that it's a copyright infringement, we obviously cannot put it in here. Nobody wants a lawsuit. So make sure that if you are using somebody else's work, if it's a small piece, it's cited. If it's a giant part of it, you need to look and be careful about copyright. And it doesn't mean just text. It means photos too. If you're uploading a photo that is copyrighted, it's inside of a book that's copyrighted. This is something that we probably cannot use surely without getting permission from the person who published that particular item. So keep that in mind. There's some rules on the copyright decision tool that might help you sort out what you need to get permission for. Anything with a red asterisk, that means that you have to, it's required. So it's obvious here, name of the submitter, the email, the phone, the state that which you are submitting it from. It doesn't mean that it's specific to that state yet. Name of the organization, and then the name of the author. Sometimes an organization will put this in, say, Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation, and the author is somebody that either works for them or was a teacher. It's just a way to give credit to that particular individual. Notice that the organization is not required. This means that a teacher can submit this, or any kind of educator or any volunteer on their own who's passionate about agricultural literacy can submit a lesson plan for consideration in the National Ag Literacy Curriculum Matrix. So, lesson plan title, you will then select a grade level where this lesson goes, and you can actually only select one grade level. There's some reasons for this, and they're all related to the national standards and to the ag literacy outcomes. If you check all of these, you would be presented with a whole host. And keep in mind, these are grade levels that span various grades, so hopefully you can find that, some grade level that is applicable to your piece of instruction. If in fact you really believe that your lesson plan is both upper elementary and it would span into, say, 7th grade, then you will probably be entering 2 items, or in the notes that when you hit submit, you could say, please consider this for this other grade level. There are other standards, and we would take a look at it. But for the most part, you'll be selecting one of these grade groupings, if you will, and then you are presented with the correct outcomes for that grade grouping. You are presented with the actual standards for that grade grouping, because this is the way teachers look at instruction. And so by having this grouping, we hope that we capture most of it. There are, in fact, some lessons in this matrix that we have a version for upper elementary and we have a version for middle school, and the lesson actually gets tweaked somewhat. It might be something with the reading or something with the writing activities or some other aspect of it. But sometimes people will submit the lesson, and behind the title, you'll see a grade level for that one. It's actually 2 separate lessons, meaning different set of standards, both for national ag literacy outcomes and for the different content standards. So I've pulled open here the ag literacy outcomes. Obviously, let's say it was science, since I clicked on science. These are the outcomes we have for science in the national ag literacy outcomes. And these are the content standards in science. And if you drop these down, and let's say it's about molecules to organisms, structures, and process, you can simply roll over these and see if that heading matches up with one of your objectives, and you would just check that off. Check that off. These are required. These lessons must meet these standards to be in the matrix. And moving down, you would also, if you have any common core connections, there must be, just very vaguely, in this case, it might be reading, or it might be, because it's a science lesson and there's a lot of crossover, it might be math. So you would check some of those off as well. We do take a look at these later on as we go through the review process. Keep in mind that these ag literacy outcomes are aligned with these content standards. So it is important to understand that these are grade appropriate ag literacy outcomes. And if your lesson uses, let's say for example, your lesson, I reviewed one the other day, your lesson uses eggs, and the students their engineering project is to design an egg carton. If in your lesson and it's a great STEM type of lesson, if in your lesson though you don't talk anything about eggs, and as a point of agricultural literacy, like they understand eggs come from a chicken, the colors don't match, you put something in there like did you know facts, something that will connect to agricultural literacy beyond the fact that they're just making a carton, and it could have been a carton for anything. It could have been a carton for air fresheners. But if they don't get any kind of agricultural understanding out of it, we're probably going to kick it back to you and say, so what? What is the meaning related to agriculture? And that's why these NALOs are in here. So an egg carton design could be a really great project, but we need to have pieces in there that would also make students agriculturally literate about eggs and egg production. And it doesn't have to be big and gigantic, but it definitely has to be there. For example, would all egg shells be the same? And maybe some cartons might have to be cushioned more than others. And why would eggshells, sometimes people say, hey, my eggshells are super thick, mine are thin. Why are they different? It's a point of ag literacy. You'll also enter your keywords. So these are the words that you think people would use to search for a lesson on this topic. This lesson may not be state specific, so just leave it here. If you feel like everybody in all 50 states or even worldwide could use this, then we would leave it as not state specific. However, if it is a lesson that is state specific, it's only about one thing that you think your state does. Maybe it's related to your state's history. Maybe it's related to your state's history and water law, or your state's history and branding. Then go ahead and click down and select a state. By the same token here, if it can be used by all regions, just leave it. But if you feel like, well, this is about Texas branding laws, it's part of Texas history, I'm clicking it as state specific, but I believe that a region could use this, probably Oklahoma or some other state, then you could click that down. And we usually find these types of things in the social studies and history area, not so much in the other content areas, which I kind of blew by here, just so you know. In the content areas, we are looking for lessons in career content, economics, geography, health, history, science, And those are the content areas that agricultural literacy and the National Ag Literacy Outcomes cover. All right, now let's get down to the bulk here of what has to happen. The purpose of this lesson, this will be fairly short. The time that it takes, the materials that you have or are required for this lesson, the vocabulary that you feel is important, new words, and of course, if we see these in review, we will add some more words to the vocab. You click a plus button here and you add each one at a time. Background. This gives you quite an overview here of what the background should look like. But essentially, the background contextualizes the agricultural concepts that you have in there, the soil texture, why do farmers need to know it? Not just background like we find from an encyclopedia, but really linking it to agriculture. That would go right in here inside of the background. An interest approach. This is the engagement part. Remember going back to that wiki of strategy tools. How are you going to engage the students in this particular topic? So that would go there. And there's some helpful hints here when you click on the eye. What is an interest approach? And it will give you some ideas of what an interest approach might be. Close that. And scrolling down, the procedures for this lesson and the essential files. Each one of these you just keep adding into here. If it's an essential link, like something like they have to use this website, it goes here. This is not you don't put anything in here that it's not asked for in the procedures. It is not a place where you put the companion resources or the enrichment types of things. That will come down here at the bottom. Did you know is a great place to put those kinds of things that link agricultural literacy to your lesson. So for example, going back to my egg carton example, I think you could put some great facts in here. In fact, here's one about eggs that would help make that connection between the activity the students are doing and agriculture. The enriching activities, this is where you put things that may really support this lesson, but aren't required. They're not something that's absolutely essential for the perfect execution of this lesson. And then finally, the sources and credits. If you need to give any kinds of permissions, they would go here, and we always also look for this in our review. Now, let's say after all of this, you get to the bottom and you think you've got everything and you hit submit. Then it comes to us. But let's say that you don't have it. You ran out of time. It's time to go to lunch. You got a meeting. You could scroll down here and click on Save Lesson Plan to finish later. And provided that you entered your email at the top, you would then be sent a link so that when you come back to this or you're ready to finish this lesson off, you come back to it, it's left exactly how you had it. You finish off the lesson and then hit submit. Now that was a very quick overview for scrolling through this lesson, but I'm going to take a look back here at an actual lesson, Flower Power, so you can see what it looks like. I highly recommend that you do this this is just one lesson, but several lessons in here, so you can see how the kinds of resources or information that is requested for submission, in addition to the rubric that I already talked about. This lesson has 3 activities, and so it's got 3 different groups of materials. That's pretty big. We oftentimes say 3 is really it, and then we really got to have a new lesson. It's 2 40-minute sections, so hopefully that teachers can get done, and oftentimes people have tested these so they know what it is. In this case, I know this one has been pilot tested. There are essential files that go with it. They are all, this will look beautiful when yours is done. It's all linked. You just put it in there. The vocabulary, the did you know, that kind of get them interested, and the background. The background here is extensive, but so teachers don't have to scroll and can look right at the lesson when they're online. We've backed it up here so that they can, scroll down and not see all of it, and they can click on more if they like. But you should have at least a paragraph, usually 3, because oftentimes teachers do not have a background in agriculture, and you're going to have to connect that information with content standards to agriculture for them. The interest approach, in this case, they're just asking questions. Look for other opportunities. Maybe it's videos, maybe it's a demonstration, maybe kids engage in an activity right off the bat. Something that really is student-centered is something that's really going to be engaging at the get-go. Procedures, so all of these things that you saw that were required are down inside here, and then the suggested companion resources. These are not required in this lesson, but these are things that teachers might really want to use to make this lesson go a little bit longer or to really engage students further. So this one has a lot. Most suggested companion resources are maybe 2 to 3, but this lesson has quite a few. And then the sources and credits. Here are the Ag Literacy Outcome Standards that were checked. Here are the Education Content Standards and the Common Core connections. Okay, hopefully that helps you with entering a piece of instruction into the curriculum matrix. Look forward to reviewing them. If you have any questions about the submission process, just let me know, or you can also give me a call.